Hi kids, how are you today? Do you like to fly kites? Of course you do. Everybody loves to fly kites. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at how kites got started. Who made the first kite? How are kites used today? And how are kites used in history? We'll take a look at the history of kites in this lesson. So, let's take a look at the contents. First of all, we're going to look at fly a kite. We're going to learn about flying a kite or how to fly a kite. Then we'll see a flying start. This will tell us how kites started or a story about how kites became popular or how they started. Then we'll look at the parts of a kite. Of course, a kite has many different parts, and we can name those parts so we can learn more about kites in this section. Then we hear kites take off. Kites take off has two meanings. Take off means to start to fly, like a plane takes off. But a kite can also take off, right? It starts to fly. That's one meaning. The second meaning is if something takes off, it becomes very popular, right? For example, iPads took off. They became very popular. Cell phones took off. They became very popular. So two meanings. A kite can fly, take off, really, or they can take off and become very popular. Two meanings. Kites around the world. We'll take a look at kites in many different countries. And then we have the title, right? A kite day. We'll learn a story about a special kite day. And we'll also take a look at kites for racing. You can have racing competitions with kites. Interesting. Finally, we'll take a look at the index at the back of the book. Okay, let's begin with fly a kite. Fly a kite. And you can see many pictures here. Many people are having fun with their kites. Look at these kids here. They're at the beach. The beach is a great place to fly a kite. And they're going to fly their kites here. And this girl has a very small kite, but it's a very complex kite. Look at that kite. It's very interesting. I've never seen a kite like that before. It's a very cool looking kite. And look at this kite. That's very 재밌어요, right? That's a big frog in the sky. If you saw that, you'd go, what is that? Right? That's a special kind of kite also. Okay, let's take a look here. Kites are many colors and shapes. And we can see that, right? Here's a different shape. This is an interesting shape here. And we have lots of different colors and shapes for kites. Some kites are made of paper. Made of. What is it made of, right? Many things are made from some material. Some things are made from wood. Some things are made from plastic. Some things are made from paper, made of paper. You can say made of, or you could also say made from. It means the same thing. Made of paper. Some kites are made of cloth. Some kites are made of plastic. Okay? So we can use many different materials to make kites. We can use paper. We can use cloth. We can use plastic. If you look at these different types of kites, these are probably, they could be cloth, right? This is probably plastic, okay? This could be paper. I'm not sure, but maybe, okay? But I'm pretty sure about this one. I'm pretty sure that's plastic, okay? Okay. Some kites are huge, huge, 너무 큰요, right? Very, very big. And this kite is really big. Look, it's not very far off the ground, and the people look really small compared to the kite. That's a huge kite. Really, really big. Some kites are tiny, right? I said this kite is very interesting because it's so small. And look, she's just sitting on the ground, and it's very close to her, and it's already flying, but it's a tiny kite. It's a very, very small kite. So huge, very big, tiny, very small. The first kites were made of silk or paper. And we can see a very old drawing here. This looks like an old Korean drawing, right? Could be Korean, could be Chinese, could be Japanese, somewhere in East Asia, very traditional painting. And the old kites, the very first kites, they used silk or paper to make those kites. So, where did kites come from? Where did they start, right? We have a flying start, which is a funny title, right? A flying start means also to have a very good start, to have a very successful start. But it also means the kite flies, right? So it has two meanings again, right? So a flying start. There was once a farmer. There was once a farmer. Usually stories about a long time ago usually use once, like once upon a time. There was once a farmer. There was once a princess, right? Once upon a time, there was a frog, okay? Usually stories about a long time ago use this word once. It doesn't tell us when. We just think probably a long time ago. There was once a farmer. He lived in China. One day, he was working outside. The wind blew his hat away. The wind blew his hat, right? The farmers in China, you can see the pictures here, they're wearing hats, right? And this young farmer, you can see his hat here, and the wind blew it away. But what did the farmer do? The farmer had strings on his hat. If you look at this man's hat, you can see the string here. They use those strings to tie the hat, so when they take the hat off, it doesn't fall down. It just stays on their back. That's convenient. But on this day, it was a windy day. It was lots of wind, and he was working outside. The wind blew his hat, and he grabbed the string, right? The hat had strings to tie it on. The farmer caught hold of one of the strings. The hat flew above him. The first kite was made. So this is the first kite. It was a hat, a farmer's hat, right? So the hat was flying in the wind. The farmer was holding onto the string, and he got an idea. Oh, this is kind of fun. This is cool, right? My hat's moving back and forth, right? And that was the very first kite. That's the story about the first kite. Okay, so now we know where kites came from. Let's take a break here. We'll come back and learn some more interesting stories and facts about kites. Okay, welcome back. Well, we learned that the first kite was a farmer's hat, but of course, the farmer's hat probably didn't fly very well. This is a much better kite. This kite flies very well, but there are certain parts of the kite that help it fly well. What are those parts? Many people fly kites today. So a lot of people fly kites. When I was young, I used to fly kites with my brother. And it was a very popular thing to do. So many people fly kites today. Kites have frames. Frames are made of sticks or poles. Where is the frame on this kite? You can see the frame here. This is the frame. And these are sticks or poles that are wrapped with cloth, right? They form the shape. They make the shape of the kite. So the frame makes the shape of the kite. And this is a V shape here, okay? Kites have a sail to catch the wind. You can see the sail here. This is plastic or paper or maybe cloth, but the sail is the fabric, and that's what it's going to catch the wind. The wind is going to push that, and if you have that material here, it's going to give it the power, the power to go up into the sky, and you have to hold onto the string, right, very, very tightly, otherwise your kite will fly away. Kites have strings too, and that's what I'm talking about. The string here, that's the string that you hold on to, and the string is attached here and here and here and also here and here. And you hold on to the string so the kite doesn't fly away. But if you keep the kite, right, if you use your strength to pull the kite, the wind gets stronger and it pulls the kite higher. So you let out more string. But you can't let the string go or just, let all the string go out and the kite will fall to the ground, right? You have to keep some pressure on that kite so that the wind keeps blowing against it and it goes higher and higher. And you can see how high you can fly your kite. Some people have that kind of contest. They see how high they can fly their kite. If they can get all the strings gone, there's just a little bit string here on the tube and you're holding on to it. That's really high up there. So yeah, it's kind of fun to see how high you can fly your kite. But your kite has these parts of the kite help it fly. Okay, now how can you, I gave you some tips already, but here are some more tips about flying a kite. Here are many people, wow, look at all the different kites. These are really wild looking kites, really neat. And these people, some kids, even some adults, are having fun flying these kites. How can they fly the kite well? What are some tips? Tips are like suggestions or advice to help you do something. Please give me a tip. Please give me advice, right? Please give me some information about something. So these are some kite flying tips. Number one, the first tip, the first piece of advice is choose a windy day. That's obvious, right? Of course, mulon, right? If there's no wind, you can't fly a kite, right? You throw your kite, it'll just fall down to the ground because no wind will catch it, right? So you have to choose a windy day, maybe sometime in the spring or the fall, right? Where there's lots of wind. 2, you will need lots of space. You need lots of open space. You can't fly a kite in a forest. There's too many trees, right? You can't fly a kite in the city. There's too many roads. Cars are going back and forth. There's light poles, right? There's buildings. You need lots of open space, like a field, maybe at your school, on your playground. There's lots of space there. Or go out to a park where there's lots of open space. Keep away from trees and power cables. Important. Trees, of course, because you don't want to lose your kite. Your kite will get caught in the tree. You may not be able to pull it down. The tree might catch it and you just lose your kite. A power cable is a wire, right, that runs from one post to another post, and there's a lot of electricity in that cable. So it's dangerous if your kite touches it. Some electricity might come down the string and get you. So keep your kite away from power cables. It can be very dangerous. 3, ask a friend to help push your kite into the air. So you see these two kids here, this friend is helping this friend to push the kite into the air. And that's very helpful, right? Because the kite has to have that first takeoff. The kite is not going to take off from the ground. You have to throw it in the air in order for it to catch the wind. Okay? So your friend can throw it up in the air, the wind will catch it, and then you can start letting the string out and it will go up into the sky. So ask your friend to help push your kite into the air like these two friends are doing here. That's great. Okay, so these are some kite flying tips to help you fly your kite safely and well. Okay, kites take off. Remember I told you there were 2 meanings for this phrase, take off. One means, the kite takes off. You throw it in the air, the wind catches it, and it takes off. That's one meaning. Another meaning of take off is something becomes popular. And that's the meaning that we're talking about here. We're talking about when did kites become popular? How did they become popular? We learned before that kites were invented in China, right? The first kites were thought of in China with the farmer in his hat. Well, how did kites become popular over the world? How did they take off in popularity? Well, maybe you know about a famous person in history. I'm sure you've heard his name. Long ago, there was an explorer. His name was Marco Polo. Marco Polo, right? Marco Polo. You've heard of Marco Polo. He's a very famous Italian explorer who traveled to China with his father. And he lived in China for a long time, and he saw many wonderful things that Europeans didn't know about. When he went back to Italy, to Europe, he told Europeans about what he saw in China, and many things became popular. Kites were one of those things. His name was Marco Polo. He was born in Italy. He was born in Italy. That's where he's from. There are stories about his adventures. Very famous. Everybody knows Marco Polo, right? If you study history, you know about Marco Polo. Very famous person. There are many stories about his adventures from Italy through the Middle East to China, back down through India, and back to Europe. Marco Polo went to China. He saw people flying kites. Remember, he's from Europe. They didn't have kites in Europe. So he goes to China. He says, wow, what are they doing? That looks cool. That's really neat, right? He had never seen a kite before. 전에 못 봤어요. 전에 못 봤어요. Yeah, he never saw a kite before. See, I'm trying to learn Korean, okay? He never saw a kite before. He had never seen. Had never seen. Had never seen means never in his life did he do it. If you say, I have never seen a Walt Disney movie, it means you have never seen a movie from Walt Disney, right? If you say, I have never flown a kite, it means in your life you never flew a kite before, not even once, right? In this case, Marco Polo had never seen a kite being flown, not even once. This is the first time. He had never seen a kite before. Marco Polo went home to Italy. He showed people how to fly a kite. He learned it in China. He saw it, he learned how to do it. He went home, back to his hometown, and he showed people how to fly a kite, right? That is how kite flying spread around the world. So here's Marco Polo. Here are his Chinese friends, and they are showing him, they are teaching him how to fly a kite. And here are some other Chinese people, and they are flying kites. So Marco Polo learned how to fly kites from the Chinese. He took it back to Italy, and he taught the Europeans, Italians, and other Europeans how to fly kites. And so the idea of kite flying spread around the world. Very interesting. Kites around the world. Now they are everywhere, right? People all around the world fly kites. There are kite shows. There are prizes for the best kites. And we can see some pictures here for some different kites, okay? So kites are very popular all over the world. Everywhere, in every country, you can find people flying kites. There are kite shows. You know, people get together. Lots of people get together and they show their kites. They say, hey, look at my kite. I've got a good kite. Oh, that's very colorful, very beautiful kites. That's a big kite. That's a small kite, right? It's a huge kite. It's a tiny kite. Very interesting to go to different shows. Whether it's for kites or anything else, you can see a lot of very interesting things. There are prizes for the best kites. People judge. They say, wow, that's the best kite. Let's give them a prize. Take a look here. We see California, USA. They look like they're near the beach somewhere, or maybe it's a lake. But look at these kites. They look like aliens from another world, right? They're pretty cool. Wow, look at this one. It's got big teeth, 2 eyes, and it's got a very strange tail. Wow, really big, interesting kites. Over here, this is Blackpool, England. These are just floating animals, right? They're like playful children's animals, like toys, that are huge and they're flying in the sky, right? Here we can see a penguin. Here we see what looks like a bear. It's probably a teddy bear. And they're just flying along in the sky in England. So these are 2 examples of kite shows. If you have a kite show, it would be very interesting and fun to go and check out, to look at all the different kites at the show. Okay, let's take a break here. We'll come back and we'll learn even more things about kites. See you then. Hi kids, welcome back. We're learning about kites in this lesson. We've learned about the history of kites. We've learned about how kites have spread out all over the world. And we've seen how people use kites today in shows. There's many different styles and sizes and colors of kites. Well, let's read some more about kites in Japan. In Japan, there are kite shows on special days. Right? There are so many Japanese people here, and they're having a kite show. Kite shows in Japan began a long time ago. So kite shows have a long history in Japan. Of course, Japan is right next to China, so the idea of kites probably went to Japan very early, and also to Korea, of course. This little fish is interesting because it's not really a fish. It looks like a kite. Maybe this is a type of Japanese kite, right? But a kite show in Japan, they began a long time ago. There is a story about a famous event and a famous tradition for kites in Japan. And we have the title of the book and of this chapter, A Kite Day, a special day for kites. What happened? Let's read. There was once a king. Here we have once again. Again, we know that means a long time ago. There was once a king. Okay, a long time ago in Japan, there was a king. He lived in Japan. The king had a baby boy, right? A prince. The king had a baby boy. That was the prince, right? He was very proud. The king, not the boy. The boy was still a baby. The king was very proud. The king, he flew a kite over his city. So the king had a baby boy. The king was very happy and very proud. He wanted to tell everybody, yay, I had a boy, right? It's your new prince. So he flew a kite over the city to announce, to tell everybody, I had a boy, yay. Okay? The kite had the name of his baby boy on it. So this is the name of the baby boy. Look at the kite. It looks like a baby boy, right? Very interesting. So people could see the kite and they're like, oh, look, it's a baby boy. Yay, the king had a baby boy. And they can read the name of the baby boy on the kite. So it's a way for the king to announce to his people, here, this is my son. He will be your future king. This is news. Okay? All the people who lived nearby could see it. So that's a very good story. Today, Japanese people fly kites to mark the same baby's birthday. The same baby's birthday. So it's like this baby became very famous because his father flew a kite on his birthday. And the boy is so famous. Of course, he became king later on, but it's such a famous story, such a tradition, that people in Japan still fly kites on that day, right, on the anniversary of that day, to celebrate that same baby boy's birth, right? It's the same baby boy, not somebody else. Not to fly a kite when they have a son, when a mother or father has a son, but this prince who lived a long time ago. That's very interesting. That's an interesting tradition. Okay. Kites for racing. People also use kites in sports, right? They're very exciting, right? And you can use them in sports. This looks really cool. This is a really cool sport. I would like to do this someday. Kites are fixed to skis, right? So skis, that's not here. Skis are like when you're on snow, right? If you live in an area where there's no mountains, right, you can't ski down. Let's say it's all flat. There's lots of snow, but how can you ski? Well, put your skis on, have a big kite, and the kite can pull you across the flat snow, right? So kites are fixed to skis. They can be fixed to surfboards and kayaks too, right? Now that's what these guys are doing. They're surfing in the ocean, but they're using a kite because the kite makes them go faster, and they can surf on the ocean on their surfboard, right? You can also use a kayak. A kayak is a small boat. One person, maybe two, but usually one person sits in a very small boat, It's a very narrow boat, and you usually use a paddle, right? Use a paddle, and you can go fast in the water. Well, if you have a kite, you have wind power. Now you can use that kite and you can steer it in the wind, and you can make your small boat go where you want to. So you could use a kite with your kayak, and a kayak is a small boat. So this is a beach where people race with kites, and they have a race, and you can see the many different kites. They're very big, they're simple. They just need to catch the wind. They're simple kites, but they're very strong, and you have to have a lot of strength to hold on to it, because that's a lot of power pulling away from you. But you hold on to it, and if you're on a surfboard, the power pulls you along the water. That sounds really cool, doesn't it? That's why someday I would like to try that. That sounds great. Sounds like a lot of fun. Okay. Look at this guy. That's exactly what he's doing. Check that out. Isn't that fun? Doesn't that look fun? That looks great. His feet are in the surfboard here. They're holding on. He's got something he puts his feet into so it doesn't slip, right? And there's the kite. He's holding on to it, and he can steer. He can choose. He wants to go over here. He wants to go over there. He can steer and control where he goes on the surfboard. That's great. That's really awesome. Looks really fun. Okay. Kites have a long history. As we saw, this is like review. They have a long history. The first kite was in China a long time ago. Farmer invented or discovered how kites can work. So they have a very long history. They have been used for many things. Have been used. That means that they have been used for a very long time. And they're used for many things, many different things. So kites have been used for a long time, and it's continually, right? No, they didn't stop using kites. Kites have been used. They started to be used a long time ago, maybe thousands of years ago, and they continue to be used. They have been used. So have been used means for a very long time. They are continually used. So we use them for lots of different things. What did we see? We saw to announce the birth of a baby prince, right? We saw that they are used for shows, to have contests. Who has the best kite, right? They're used for fun, just having fun and flying a kite on a windy day. So these are many different things that kites are used for. Now we have a question. What do you think kite flying will be used for in the future? Nide, right? In the future, 100 years from now, how will people use kites, right? That's an interesting thing to think about. Think about that yourself. What other things can you use a kite for? Maybe you can invent a new way to use a kite. Because, of course, people didn't use this, 100 years ago. This is very new, right? So what other new things might people use kites for in the future? Can kites be used to make energy? Do you think kites will be used to make electricity for your homes? Maybe. We don't know. We'll have to see what the future holds. Maybe you'll come up with a great idea on how to use kites. Maybe it will be for sports, maybe it'll be for fun, or maybe it will be something useful like making energy. Okay, well that's an interesting thing to think about. Okay, before we go, we want to talk about the index, right? The index tells us about important subjects that we learned in the book, and it tells us what page we can find those subjects. So if we forget or we want to remember something, we can just look up the subject and we can go right back to that page and read about it again. We learned about China on pages 4 and 8. Remember, we learned about China. China was the place where kites were invented. And also Marco Polo went to China and learned how to use kites. Frames are a part of the kite. Also sails are a part of the kite. We can see frames and sails. Of course, they're both on the same page. We talked about parts of a kite on page 6. If you want to know about kites in Japan, if you want to remember though what we learned about it, go to page 11 or 13. 11 to 13 actually. 11 to 13. 11, 12, and 13. You can read again about how kites were used in Japan. If you want to read again about Marco Polo, his information is on pages 8 and 9. And if you want to read about kite shows, if you want to remember about that, that's pages 11 and pages 10 and 11. Pages 10 and 11. If you want to know about silk and kites, that's on page 3. And finally, sports. How are kites used in sports? Take a look at page 14. Okay, so very interesting information about kites. Makes me want to go out and learn how to surf and use a kite. That's really interesting. And maybe it makes you want to learn how to make a kite and go outside and fly it. You have some good tips for flying a kite. You can also buy a kite at a toy store. You can make a kite or fly a kite. But whatever you do, have fun. And remember, be careful. Use an open area. Keep your kite away from trees and especially power cables. And of course, especially away from roads and cars so you don't get distracted. Okay? So have fun. Always have fun, but be safe. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.